Death by Guy de Maupassant. I had loved her madly. Why do we love? How bizarre it is to no longer see but one being, to no longer have but one thought in the soul, but one desire in the heart, and but one name on the lips. A name that climbs up incessantly, climbing like water from a spring, from the depths of the soul, climbing up to the lips. And that we say, we repeat, we murmur ceaselessly, everywhere, in that way like a prayer. I will not tell our story. Love has but one story, always the same. I had met her and loved her. That is all. And for a year I had lived in her tenderness, in her arms, in her caress, in her regard, in her dresses, in her words, enveloped, bound, imprisoned in everything that came from her, in a manner so complete that I no longer knew if it was day or night, if I was dead or alive, on this old planet or elsewhere. And just like that, she died. How? I do not know. I no longer know anything. She came home wet one rainy night, and the next day she was coughing. She coughed for about a week and took to bed. What happened? I no longer know. Doctors came, wrote, and left. Some medicines were brought. A woman made her drink them. Her hands were hot. Her forehead burned and was moist. Her look bright and sad. I spoke to her. She responded. What did we say to each other? I don't know anymore. I forgot everything. Everything. She died. I remember very well her little sigh so feeble, the last one. The nurse said, "Ah." I understood. I understood. I knew nothing more, nothing. I saw a priest who pronounced the words, "Your mistress." It seemed to me that he was insulting her. Since she was dead, no one any longer had the right to know this. I chased him out. Another came who was very nice, very sweet. I cried when he spoke about her to me. They gave me advice on 1,000 things concerning the funeral. I don't remember. I remember very well, however, the coffin, the noise from the hammer when they nailed her inside. Oh my God. She was buried in that hole. Some people came, some of her girlfriends. I saved myself. I escaped. I ran away. I walked for a long time through the streets. Then I returned home. The next day I left for a journey. Yesterday, I returned to Paris. When I saw my room again, our room, our bed, our furniture, the entire house where remains all that is left of the life of someone after their death, I was seized by a return of grief so violent that I felt like opening the window and throwing myself down into the street. No longer able to remain amongst these things, inside these walls that had enclosed and sheltered her, and that must have retained in their imperceptible cracks 1,000 of her atoms, of her skin and of her breath, I grabbed my hat so that I could make my escape. All of a sudden, the instant I reached the door, I passed before the large mirror in the hallway that she put up there to look at herself, from head to toe, every day as she was leaving, to make sure her clothes and makeup looked well, correct, and pretty, from her little boots to her hairstyle. And I stopped sharply in front of that mirror that had so often reflected her. So often that it must also have retained her image. I was standing there trembling, eyes fixed on the glass, on that flat, deep, empty glass, but that had contained her entirely, possessed as much as I, as much as my passionate regard. I felt as if I loved that glass. I touched it. It was cold. Oh, the memory, the memory. Sorrowful mirror, burning mirror, living mirror, horrible mirror that makes one suffer all the torments. Fortunate is he whose heart is like the mirror, where reflections slip and fade away, forgetting all it contained, all that happened before it, all that has looked at itself in it, reflected in its affection, in its love. How I suffer. I went out, and despite myself, without realizing it, without wanting it, I went by the cemetery. I found her simple grave, a marble cross with these few words: she loved, was loved, and died. She was there, below, decayed. How terrible. I sobbed, forehead on the ground. I remained there a long time, a long time. Then I saw that night was coming. Then a strange, crazy desire, a desire of a desperate lover, took hold of me. I wished to pass the night near to her, one last night, to cry at her grave. But someone will see me, chase me out. How to go about it? I was clever. I got up and started wandering about that city of the dead. I walked and walked. How small this city is compared to the other, that which we live in. And yet, how much more numerous than the living, these dead. We need big houses, streets, so much space for the 4 generations who see the daylight at the same time. Drink water from springs, wines from vines, and eat bread from the plains. and for all the generations of the dead, for the entire ladder of humanity descended down to us, almost nothing. A field, almost nothing. The earth takes them back. Oblivion erases them. Adieu. At the end of the inhabited cemetery, I suddenly saw its oldest part, where the long deceased end up mixing with the dirt, where the crosses themselves rot, where tomorrow they put the latest comers. It is full of wild roses, strong and dark cypress trees, a sad and beautiful garden, fed on human flesh. I was alone, quite alone. I huddled myself in a green tree. I hid myself entirely amongst its thick and somber branches. And I waited, clinging to the trunk like someone shipwrecked clinging to a plank. When the night was dark, very dark, I left my refuge and started walking softly, slowly, quietly on that dirt full of the dead. I wandered a long time, a long time, a long time. I could not find her again. Arms extended, eyes open, bumping into graves with my hands, with my feet, with my knees, with my chest, with my head itself. I went on without finding her. I touched, I fingered like a blind man, searching his path. I fingered the stones, the crosses, the iron grates, the glass wreaths, and the wreaths of faded flowers. I read the names with my fingers, walking them along the letters. What a night! What a night! I did not find her again. No moon! What a night! I was scared, a dreadful fear in the narrow trails between two rows of graves. Graves, graves, graves. Always graves, on the right, on the left, in front of me, all around me, everywhere, graves. I sat on one of them, for I could no longer walk, so much as my knees wobbled. I was hearing my heart beat, and I heard other things as well. What? A confused, unnameable noise. Was it in my distraught head, in the impenetrable night, or beneath the mysterious earth, beneath the earth sown with human cadavers, this noise? I looked around me. How long did I stay there? I do not know. I was paralyzed with terror. I was drunk with terror, ready to scream, ready to die. And suddenly it seemed that the slab of marble on which I was sitting was moving. Certainly it was moving, as if someone was raising it. In a bound, I threw myself on the neighboring tomb, and I saw the stone I just left stand straight up. And the dead appeared, a naked skeleton who, with its bent back, was rejecting the stone. I saw very well, dark as the night was. On the cross I could read, "Here rests Jacques Olivant, deceased at age 51, He loved his family, was honest and good, and died in the peace of the Lord. Now, the dead also read what was written on his tomb. Then he picked up a stone from the path, a sharp little stone, and started carefully scratching these things. He erased them, slowly, looking with his empty eyes at the place where just now they had been engraved, and with the end of the bone that had been his index finger, he wrote in bright letters, like those lines people trace on walls with match heads. Here rests Jacques Olivant, deceased at age 51. He hastened by his callousness the death of his father to inherit his fortune. He tortured his wife, tormented his children, cheated his neighbors, stole whenever he could, and died miserable. When he finished writing, the motionless dead man beheld his work. And I saw, turning around, that all the graves were opened, that all the cadavers were out, that all had erased the lines inscribed by their relations on the gravestones, to reestablish the truth there. And I saw that all had been the tormentors of those close to them, heinous, dishonest, hypocrites, liars, deceivers, slanderers, jealous, that they had robbed, cheated, committed every shameful act, every abominable act, these good fathers, these faithful wives, these devoted sons, these chaste daughters, these honest merchants, the men and women said to be irreproachable. They wrote, all at the same time, on the threshold of their final resting place, the cruel, terrible, and holy truth that the whole world was ignorant of, or pretended to be ignorant of, while they were alive. I thought that she also must have written on her grave. And now, without fear, running among the open coffins, among the cadavers, among the skeletons, I went toward her, sure that I would find her soon enough. I recognized her from a distance, without seeing her face covered by the shroud. And on the marble cross, where I had just read, she loved, was loved, and died, I now saw, being out one day to cheat on her lover, she caught cold in the rain and died. Apparently, they picked me up unconscious at daybreak near a grave. The end.